It is rare, very rare, for a national team to just disappear, but that is exactly what has happened to the Qatar women's national team. Organized to the point that it was once playing in major international tournaments, it now just doesn't play, at least officially. It's a little confusing, but the story starts in 2009 when the Qatar women's national team was officially formed, and there are conflicting reports as to why this happened. You see, in 2009, Qatar officially registered its bid to host the 2022 World Cup, and around the same time, in the same year, it started up the women's national team, when previously there had been no formal setup for women's football in the entire country. This seems like an obvious coincidence that they're using the creation of a women's national team as part of their World Cup bid, and that's why the New York Times asked former, I guess, players of the Qatar women's national team about it, to which none of them really answered. Before the now manager of the team, Ahmed Al-Kawari, chimed in with, and I quote, "No, no, no, no," in response to they created the women's national team for the World Cup. But the strange thing is that the first coach of the Qatari national team says that's exactly what happened, according to The Athletic. She literally says the Qatari guy responsible for men's football wanted to develop women's football in order to have the bid for the 2022 World Cup. He asked if there would be any interest. And in FIFA's official evaluation of the Qatari bid, they actually said that Qatar mentioned establishment of structures for non-elite football, grassroots women, and promotion of women's football, including creation of special facilities. The report that FIFA created also stated it aims to bring all other football stakeholders and areas under the umbrella of the QFA, which is the Qatari Football Association. Don't want to get ahead of myself here, but the women's national team is obviously not on the Qatari Football Association website. Now, there's nothing wrong with creating a women's national team as part of a World Cup bid, right? As long as it's an earnest effort to develop the women's team, the women's game, and provide that opportunity to play sports. Really, it becomes a problem if it is just for the World Cup bid and then kind of goes away eventually. And that is obviously where we are heading here. I mean, they even earmarked one of the stadiums, Education City Stadium, for women's football specifically. But this is the world Helen Acosta stepped into when she accepted the job to be the first national team coach of the Qatari women's team. They started putting the team together in 2009, and I don't know if you, and honestly, I didn't understand the process of setting up a national team from nothing without even a serious league, but that's what Costa had to go through. I mean, she literally went to universities and watched friendly tournaments to scout for potential talent. And these university games she's watching aren't like 11-a-side games either. They're playing futsal. I mean, she says they didn't know how to do it because they played with two defending and attacking players. It was futsal, but it was a base to select some players. I mean, so you're getting players into 11 aside in a competitive scene for the first time. This is an insane job and an important task if you're going to develop the female game in Qatar. It's insane the amount of hard work she's being asked to do and the level she's being asked to start at with no other coaches. And she's going to elementary schools to encourage girls to play, her ambition being to make a U13 team and a senior national team so that there's some sort of grassroots pipeline to get young girls in Qatar playing the game. I mean, it's insane what she had to do, right? But she's doing yeoman's work to pull this all together. And as she said, I didn't have an assistant coach. But the urgency from those who hired her in Qatar was to create the women's team and get it onto the FIFA ranking. And you get onto the FIFA rankings by playing FIFA-approved matches, which means it has a FIFA officiating crew and everything, and you have to play against an opponent who is in the FIFA rankings already. And Qatar does this by going to a tournament. So they go to the 2010 Arab Cup. And that's when a problem that you and I and the culture we were raised in, probably not a problem we would have thought of. TV cameras. That's an issue. Because Helen Acosta had to promise Qatari families that their family name wasn't going to be associated with the promotion of football. She was having to guarantee parents of her national team players they wouldn't be on TV or in the press. Seriously, she says that. She thought it would be great if they could get more publicity, but the families of the players didn't want it. Now, Costa makes a pretty solid point talking about this cultural resistance to this kind of pioneering national team, saying the opinion of women's playing football wasn't positive. We only speak about Arabic countries, but years ago it was the same in Occidental countries, in Portugal or England. Women's football was banned for 50 years by the English Football Association, which is true. This is obviously a giant issue when there are TV cameras at the 2010 Arab Cup, so all of a sudden the head coach of the national team's getting phone calls saying that her players aren't going to be able to play. It's chaos, and they lose all 3 games in absolute blowouts. They lose to Bahrain 17-0, they lose 18-0 to Palestine, and 12-0 to Syria. But yeah, you're also using futsal players from intramural university leagues. It's the sort of thing that's going to take time to get competitive. And one of the star players of this team is named Dwana Ismail Khalifa. I bring her up now because she actually talked about why some of her teammates couldn't play on TV. So it's not because women are not supported to play football, but it's more, parentheses, she pauses. Actually, I don't know. My family's really supportive. It's okay to play football, be on TV, and travel, so I cannot really say why. So it's clear that this isn't like a uniform cultural thing, but it's a big enough issue that it completely derailed Qatar's first tournament. Then in 2011, Qatar doesn't play at all, but is still developing, is still training. They just wanted to play that tournament to get onto the FIFA rankings. Then in 2012, they played 3 friendlies. They played Afghanistan and lost 2-0. Then they played the Maldives and they won. They beat the Maldives 4-1 and lost to Kuwait 2-0 in their 3 friendlies in 2012. But of course, these good times wouldn't last because we're very close to just the national team stopping. Granted, at this point, they've still never entered and attempted to qualify for a World Cup or an Asian Cup or anything, but at least they're playing. And after all those blowouts, they won a game. And our girl Khalifa, she scored. The first time my mom was watching me from the sidelines, I scored a goal that night and ran to her. That goal was special. These are key moments developing a national team. And then Coach Costa leaves. And she left lauding the passion of the women's national team. Costa left in 2012, and then Monika Stab came in, who's like a German journeyman female coach who's coached in like over 80 countries, allegedly. She's the national team coach of Saudi Arabia right now. She continued the whole grassroots thing. She established a U14 and U16 national team, and she managed to bring in a goalkeeping coach and another assistant while maintaining the domestic 11-a-side winter leagues, which now gives Qatari women the opportunity to play in a competitive 11-a-side league in the winter because it's too hot in the summer. We learned that already. And they keep just playing friendlies. They played the Maldives 2 more times, beat them 1-0 and 3-0. They played Bahrain again and only lost 4-0, so the vibes were up. And Qatar actually reached its highest ever ranking of 111. That's when Stab took her team to the West Asian Championship in Jordan, where they showed remarkable improvement from the Arab Cup 4 years earlier, but still lost to Palestine 4-0, Jordan 7-0, and Bahrain 8-2. And that Bahrain match is actually very significant because that is the last time that the Qatari women's team has appeared in an official FIFA match at the West Asian Championship in 2014. After her 18 months in charge, Stab was told that Qatar wanted a male Arabic-speaking coach, and so she just left. She said something prophetic for the rest of the story too. I give the sparks, they light the fire, saying that they provided some wins and some momentum, and then the interesting thing is they hired another coach, Abdulaziz Benij, and the Athletic story actually gets a little cheeky here, talking about his hiring. Not that you would know it given how little information there is about his tenure. Now, Khalifa, who's basically our only source of information for this time period from every story that I read, said he was a great coach. We developed with him. We were hard to beat. Skills-wise and physically, we improved. We went to Turkey for a training camp. I don't know about the FIFA ranking, but we had international games, I swear. That's what Khalifa said, but none of these matches, which were not even referenced in a story by the New York Times about the same topic, or on their Wikipedia page, for the record, they're not linked from anywhere, they weren't official. The New York Times was able to talk to Salim Al-Hashimi, the team's captain, I'm assuming still the captain from back in 2014, and she said, our results were bad. We took time off to train, to play only friendlies and stay out of the media, but I think something backfired. Something happened that they stopped everything. The New York Times then asked who they was, and the players just looked around uncomfortably, and Al-Khawari, who's the coach currently that we met earlier, relayed what the group was thinking, that she said they're rejecting us for no reason. But the only other time they popped up after this tour in Turkey was when their alleged coach, Gloria Kwalbe, who we don't really know who she is, and she's like impossible to find. Seriously, if you type in Gloria Kwalbe Qatar, all you get is a LinkedIn page for Gloria Kwalbe. But she appeared on BN Sports talking about how Qatar was getting ready to make a run at the World Cup now that the Women's World Cup was being expanded to 32 teams. They hadn't played a competitive match in like 5 years at this point. That's more than a whole World Cup cycle. And there's no explanation given other than they're just keeping the PR of the team alive. Well, one thing all of the sources agree on is they played a non-FIFA regulated friendly, one friendly against Afghanistan in 2021, and they won 5-0. And Khalifa, the star player from earlier, insists that the team is still training and improving, even though she admit that it had been put on hold for the Men's World Cup. One thing Khalifa is very clear on is that the Women's League is still ongoing, because you will never guess who showed up there to hand out medals. David Beckham handed out medals in the Women's League. That's right, David Beckham was handing out medals at the Qatari Women's Winter League, and that's awesome. And that shows that the grassroots effort by Costa, by Staub, by the women on the team is still surviving. There's an 11-a-side league now. There are training groups of players that protest to be the Qatari women's national team. But the fact is, it hasn't played a competitive match, a FIFA match, in 9 years, and there doesn't seem to be anything in line to change that. Part of this grassroots effort is that Khalifa is running the national youth teams as part of the QWSC, the Qatari Women's Sports Committee, and that is her full-time job. And The Athletic asked Khalifa if she would ever play an international fixture in front of fans again, and she said, if God wills it. She also said, I'm like a free spirit. I love to do what I want. If I were suppressed, I wouldn't be living in Qatar. Agar Nader Nassim Aziz Saleh, a teammate of Khalifa, I suppose current or former teammate of Khalifa, was less optimistic. She said, we are waiting for the legacy of the World Cup to bring us up. That's our only hope. We'll have to wait and see.